Hey, Mike. Oh, hey, look, it's Frank Fleming. Hey, you guys ready to
Hey.
get down and do the Chesterton?
Yeah, I'm excited to meet AI Chesterton.
Oh, what? Let's get pre-modern up
All
in
right.
this bitch now.
Everybody, club.
Everybody Chesterton. Say what? Everybody
Chesterton
Chesterton. What? Smoke a pipe and drink some whiskey. Open up that orthodoxy. Get some bread, eat that cheese. Chesterton with the K's and
do this thing with
G's.
your
We don't
fingers.
stop for want of
what
wonder.
they do.
Modernism going 6 feet under. It's getting hot in here. This common sense is fire. Wave that sword cane in the air. Cutting retorts like you just don't care. Everybody Chesterton.
Say what?
Everybody Chesterton.
What?
Smoke a pipe and drink some whiskey. Open up that orthodoxy. So quotable.
That's right. It's a quotable.
You're listening to another episode of Chesterton's Gateway with Ethan Nicolle and Michael Grumbine, and me, AI Chesterton, with this week's special guest, Frank J. Fleming. Buckle your Chester belts, boys.
That's right. Here we are. Everybody Chesterton.
I'm just waiting for the club lights to start. Roby.
Great.
Well, you see the AI video up for this. I actually got Chesterton like as a DJ in the club. Like, it's pretty crazy. They're watching it on YouTube right now. So, anyway, hey, look, we got Frank Fleming here. We got oh wait, what did you think of that song, AI Chesterton?
It's disappointing that the advent of electricity has not done much to improve upon the art form of creating music. In fact, I might say in some cases it's made it much, much worse.
But not this case, Chesterton.
Well,
not this case.
So that song, sometimes to inspire my lyrics, I just take lyrics from another song and change them, I Chesterton them up. That one was "It's Getting Hot in Here."
Yes, I could tell.
Oh, really?
Yeah. All right.
And I'm glad we didn't have Chesterton singing the real lyrics of that song.
Well, anyways, guys, thanks for having me. I feel like
Yeah, welcome, Frank. Yeah.
I feel like the dumb one here because I don't know as much about Chesterton. I've read some. I've read Ethan's book, and I read like I forget one of his books, but it was hard. It was difficult.
And Frank's smart.
Oh, is that Frank J. Fleming, author of the classic novel Side Quest? Splendid.
Oh yeah, Chesterton's a fan of. He's read your book. You've read his book.
I think there's very much a Chesterton spirit to Side Quest. So it's
Yeah,
the
I'll have to-
extraordinary and the ordinary.
I've never read SideQuest.
it is
pick
very
up.
Chestertonian. I'll say that. Yeah, I mean, he's written other books. Frank's probably better known for Super Ego series, but I love Side Quest. It's got a special place in my heart.
All right. So is that the first one I should pick up of your books, Frank?
Yeah, I think it's the Super Ego is more serious. Hellbender is more my sort of
Hellbender's
humor. Side Quest is in between.
Okay. I'll pick up SideQuest. I do know that I enjoy your X feed. I almost said Twitter feed.
How long is it follow? Frank's a good X follow.
Do a lot of Xing on Twitter.
Exactly.
Well,
so what was the inspiration for this week's essay, Ethan? Tell us.
Well, I made this book called Chesterton's Gateway, and I put a bunch of essays that I liked into it. And then we made a podcast where we do it in order. And it just so happens that this week,
Never heard of it.
We're on. I mean, I didn't write it, so I didn't. What was the inspiration to put it in the book? Is that what you're asking?
Yes, sir.
Oh, you weren't asking for a huge, thick slab of sarcastic response?
No, I like sarcasm. I like it nice and thick. I prefer my sarcasm.
I mean, this one just this is one of those ones that sticks with you. I mean, I guess we could talk about that more after we've actually read it for anybody who's not read it. But it's one of those ones that you can read to almost anybody and they kind of get it. But it also is something they never thought of, I think, in quite this way. And it affects your life. I don't know, Frank, what made you pick this one?
Well, yeah, this was my first choice when you said like a essay to go with, because it's one I I'm not as smart as Chesterton, but it's when I stumbled in before I read any Chesterton because my wife and I, we had a number of road trips or something like we're with moving vans and toting cars and stuff with animals and things. And it became our habit, and we've done road trips since we had kids and stuff too. It's become our habit when something goes wrong, as it inevitably goes on one of those big trips, is to put our hands in the air and shout adventure, because this is going to be something where it's going to be a fun story later. Not right now, but later it's going to be a fun story. And this is, what life is made of. And
Right.
that's really the essence of the essay.
Yeah, this is his famous quote: "Adventure is only an inconvenience rightly considered. An inconvenience is only adventure wrongly considered."
And
Something like that.
Yeah, and when you're actually in the middle of it and can recognize, this is one of those times it just seems inconvenient, but if you can take yourself out of it for a bit, I think it really helps a lot.
Yeah. And the idea of kind of standing outside of yourself, and if you think about what a comedy film is, it's usually a guy having a miserable time. And if you can then realize how much joy that might bring people, you can life, how much greater life is through the comedic stuff.
Exactly. I remember watching The Hangover for the first time and thinking it was one of the first comedy movies where it's like, this is awful. If I was living this, this is hilarious, but it is a truly, some of the best comedies are truly about the worst situations, but we just find humor in the oddity. The difference, I guess, for me is that Chesterton finds humor in the moment, in the inconvenience or adventure, as he calls it, whereas at my best, I tend to find it afterwards, where I have a good story to tell, like you were saying, Frank, where, but in the moment, I'm usually grumpy and,
Yeah.
feeling sorry for myself.
It's hard. It takes a bit of disassociation sometimes, just like let go of all the normal concerns and then look at it more broadly, like the situation you're in and why is this, something entertaining in a story.
Also, sometimes the guy getting really mad is what makes it funny. So maybe you need that.
That is true.
I feel like right now we're just doing the whole essay, but sort of mute darkly, maybe.
Let's just start. Yeah, let's just get the real.
This week we are reading On Running After One's Hat, from All Things Considered, written in 1915.
Yeah, it feels like a tremendous trifles essay, but it's not.
No.
All right, here we go. Buckle your Chester belts, boys.
I feel an almost savage envy on hearing that London has been flooded in my absence, while I'm in the mere country. My own Battersea has been, I understand, particularly favoured as a meeting of the waters. Battersea was already, as I need hardly say, the most beautiful of human localities. Now that it has the additional splendour of great sheets of water, there must be something quite incomparable in the landscape, or waterscape, of my own romantic town. Battersea must be a vision of Venice. The boat that brought the meat from the butchers must have shot along those lanes of rippling silver with the strange smoothness of the gondola. The greengrocer who brought cabbages to the corner of the Latchmere Road must have leant upon the oar with the unearthly grace of the gondolier. There is nothing so perfectly poetical as an island, and when a district is flooded, it becomes an archipelago.
All right. His hometown's flooded, and I'm sure. Is that an insensitive response to his...
I could see a lot of people getting mad at him, just going like, how fun, we're like Venice, where their whole houses are being ruined.
It's the first time I've ever come across what we would call a natural disaster, and someone just praising how beautiful everything must be during a natural disaster. And this sets the tone for his whole. I mean, he just goes hard in the first. He's comparing, basically semi-underwater part of London, southwest London, to a place that people go for vacations and remember their trip for the rest of their life to Venice.
I'm just wondering if this is as severe as, like, is it just kind of like high water in the town, or is this like if he was in Thailand during the Great Tsunami and he was out there like, oh,
Yeah, I don't
Vision
think
of
it's a
Venice.
tsunami.
But I mean, any sort of water that actually rises up enough to get in your house is going to
Yeah,
ruin a lot of stuff.
it's
This
a
is
disaster,
usually
as
would
I
be a
know.
huge disaster.
My
Right.
house flooded, and I did not wonder the romance of the great sheets of water as I moved about my house like a
You
gondolier.
didn't see this. You didn't see the street as a lane of rippling silver. That's that.
Though I can look back on how funny it was me putting buckets of water, like buckets under the light fixtures as water pours out of the light fixtures into my house, and
I mean,
it's
any flood
funny.
like this, so much stuff would be ruined. But it's, I think Chesterton's right. If you look at it, it's the living through experiences like these that make us in the end more than the possessions we lose.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Right, and he's focused. Like he's trying to imagine a world in which life can go on still. Like the grocer and the butcher are still making their rounds in the town, and they just happen to have boats, I guess, and they're doing it Venice style. But I mean, so he's obviously stretching credulity, but he's doing so for a purpose that he's going to lay out for us. That's because he recognizes in the next sentence that that he's doing something that's probably not going to rub people the right way.
Yeah, this is the longest chapter of it, or paragraph of this chapter. So let's dive in.
Some consider such romantic views of flood or fire slightly lacking in reality. But really, this romantic view of such inconveniences is quite as practical as the other. The true optimist who sees in such things an opportunity for enjoyment is quite as logical and much more sensible than the ordinary indignant ratepayer who sees in them an opportunity for grumbling. Real pain, as in the case of being burnt at Smithfield or having a toothache, is a positive thing. It can be supported, but scarcely enjoyed. But after all, our toothaches are the exception, and as for being burnt at Smithfield, it only happens to us at the very longest intervals. And most of the inconveniences that make men swear or women cry are really sentimental or imaginative inconveniences, things altogether of the mind. For instance, we often hear grown-up people complaining of having to hang about a railway station and wait for a train. Did you ever hear a small boy complain of having to hang about a railway station and wait for a train? No, for to him to be inside a railway station is to be inside a cavern of wonder and a palace of poetical pleasures. Because to him, the red light and the green light on the signal are like a new sun and a new moon. Because to him, when the wooden arm of the signal falls down suddenly, it is as if a great king had thrown down his staff as a signal and started a shrieking tournament of trains. I myself am of the little boy's habit in this matter. They also serve who only stand and wait for 2:15. Their meditations may be full of rich and fruitful things. Many of the most purple hours of my life have been passed at Clapham Junction, which is now, I suppose, under water. I have been there in many moods so fixed and mystical that the water might well have come up to my waist before I noticed it particularly. But in the case of all such annoyances, as I have said, everything depends upon the emotional point of view. You can safely apply the test to almost every one of the things that are currently talked of as the typical nuisance of daily life.
So what is the test? Outline the test here. Is this a test between whether something is sentimental or an imagined, an actual inconvenience like a toothache or being burnt at Smithfield, or a sentimental or imagined inconvenience, such as what? Getting stuck in traffic? Waiting for a train, yes.
Yeah, as an example, I really like that one because he talks about how like a children would be, amused by that. That's, going back to my novel Side Quest, I talk about how children, they see things with so much more wonder in it, not because they see the world more accurately for what it is. And a number of times I've tried to do that, where if I'm just sitting someplace waiting, put down the phone and then just try to look at anything around me in new eyes. Like if you were someone like a caveman or something and never seen these things, like how many wonders are just like in arm's reach, like things you would never have no idea how they're made or where they come from. And it's just, you're constantly surrounded by these things, but you just learn to tune them out.
Yeah.
That's really true. I recently went on a long trip, a cross-country trip via airport with my children, and I had this exact experience watching them. Like my wife and I were taken up with the practicalities of the travel, and then we're sitting there, waiting for the plane. There's a frustration because there's a delay, and my little kids, they don't care. They're sitting in awe watching these massive steel artifacts rumble across the tarmac, and they're watching all the people, and there's sights and sounds and smells of food and stores and color, and they just love it. To them, it's fun and interesting, and to us, it's irritating because we had to wait an extra half an hour for our plane to arrive so we could fly across the sky. It reminds me of that Louis C.K. monologue that he did on some late night show about flying and how everything becomes to us an annoyance. And we become entitled to take it for granted. Whereas if we actually thought about what we were doing, then it would be awesome. So a little bit of relationship there, but Chesterton's, I mean, I think the test is it an emotional, is it a matter of emotional control of an emotional point of view, as he says, or is it something that is truly a real pain, like a toothache or being burnt at Smithfield, which is, of course, his go-to reference for being burned at the stake for theological things. And so, which he's used, I think we've already seen it twice.
Yeah, he likes referencing to
being
burning in Smithfield. Yeah.
Well, it does help put things in perspective with most of our inconveniences. And you talk about like the plane travel, because I had to do a lot of plane travel recently, and that is one of those things where it's like a tragedy when it comes commonplace to you, because I always try to get a seat at the window and watch the takeoff, just because it feels like this view, which most of mankind has never seen, if you just like to take it for granted, almost seems wrong.
Yep. And it's an interesting thing if you think about it. Like, how is it as human beings that we have such a powerful instinct to take things that are marvelous or interesting, at least, and then make them commonplace, and then be bored, and then be annoyed when they don't go exactly the way. There's this cascade, and this weird thing that we do as humans, and I've often wondered about it, is why do we get bored of sunsets or get bored of flying in the air at 400 miles an hour? It's the kind of thing where you just, it wouldn't seem like it could get, but we have this power to make everything habitual, and then the habit becomes unnoticed, and then an inconvenience if anything changes. And it's very fascinating. And Chesterton is coming at that. He's swinging for the fences on this one, as we'll see in a second.
Yeah. Well, I think we all have a main character sort of syndrome, and we're always thinking, what's our storyline right now? What we're trying to get from A to B, and what's next, and everything else is an inconvenience to that. And I think what fascinates me about Chesterton in this essay, he's standing back and looking at the audience and seeing you as one character in this comedic film, rather than the main character who's supposed to get their way, or whatever, however that's supposed to work.
Right. That's the business virtue, like in the last couple decades of self-awareness. The book Emotional Intelligence made it popular, but having the ability to look at yourself from the outside and see what you really look like to other people, or objectively speaking. And I think that feature is large in this essay.
We will continue.
For instance, there is a current impression that it is unpleasant to have to run after one's hat. Why should it be unpleasant to the well-ordered and pious mind? Not merely because it is running, and running exhausts one. The same people run much faster in games and sports. The same people run much more eagerly after an uninteresting little leather ball than they will after a nice silk hat. There is an idea that it is humiliating to run after one's hat. And when people say it is humiliating, they mean that it is comic. It certainly is comic. But man is a very comic creature, and most of the things he does are comic, eating, for instance. And the most comic things of all are exactly the things that are most worth doing, such as making love. A man running after a hat is not half so ridiculous as a man running after a wife.
I do love he
It just
points
goes to
out how
11 right at the end.
silly sex is when you think about it. Yeah.
So I love the fact that, he first points out a logical thing, which is, look, people that think it's ridiculous to run after your hat, and you have to understand hats, obviously, hats in those days were very expensive. I mean, they were fine.
Everybody had one, right?
Yeah. And,
Hat
and they were,
we don't understand it anymore.
yeah, exactly. Which we don't, but it was a really, fine piece of clothing. And so running after your fine piece of clothing is way more interesting than running after a soccer ball or football. And so there's he points out the logical problem that we have where we judge one thing harshly and the other thing favorably. And then he points out, well, people might say, he anticipates his critic, well, it's humiliating. Well, what does that mean? It's comic. What does that mean? Comical, the comical nature of something means that the observation of what you're seeing or hearing there's a great disparity between that and the inherent dignity of the object that you're viewing. So there's this gap here, and going to your point, Ethan, the main character syndrome that we all have, where we hold ourselves to be of high dignity and worth, and we are the main character of the story around us. And so if we find ourselves doing something that isn't the main character importance or highly dignified, then we find that comical, laughable, and we don't like to laugh at ourselves.
But can't you be a main character in a comedy? I mean,
They don't want to be though.
Well, the main character in a comedy is the exception, right? He's the one that he has the least, or she has the least dignity. They get humiliated all the time, at least most comedies. So it is a little bit of a turn, right?
Yeah,
that wasn't the best choice of words. When I was saying like main character, it's more that like we sort of gear everything towards thinking about what we want in life, and everything that doesn't fit that becomes an inconvenience.
Well, yeah, I mean, when main character syndrome, usually thinking of drama and important guy and the main character in a comedy.
HBO.
You're the source of laughter, but I mean that helps so much
in
situations when you can laugh at yourself and not have to take yourself so seriously.
Yeah, I think that's he picks on the well-dressed man a lot in his essays, and I think that's the guy with his hat. He's wearing that hat to look like a guy who's got it all together. He's very well put together. He's he fits in. He's all the men wear their man uniforms, the suit and tie and hat. And there's nothing weird about me. Nothing. I got it all together. Clearly, by my nice hat, I got a good job. Suddenly, for that hat to blow off and that guy to be the one chasing it, all the other men are standing confidently and their hats are on, but he's chasing his. And I think Chesterton loves to point to these kinds of things and go like, it's so good when life breaks us out of that false confidence we find in trying to be normal and fit into everything.
I guess this is a slightly different era, but I guess he probably would have really liked the Three Stooges throwing a pie into some
close
rich man's face or something.
Yeah, you're right. That was right on the tail end of his last decade of life. But there's, I agree. And what's interesting is I don't think Chesterton is saying it from the point of view of like the anarchist or the person who's like the beach bum who refuses to put on a hat. Chesterton was well dressed himself plenty of times and wore hats all the time. And so there's nothing. He wouldn't have been criticizing the wearing of hats. He's just criticizing the ego that comes with it and the sense of self-importance that so often attends. And then, of course, he takes it to 11 immediately by bringing up sex and how comical sex is.
Yeah. It is. I mean, you think about it.
Fact check true on that.
All right, we'll continue.
Now a man could, if he felt rightly in the matter, run after his hat with the manliest ardour and the most sacred joy. He might regard himself as a jolly huntsman pursuing a wild animal, for certainly no animal could be wilder. In fact, I am inclined to believe that hat hunting on windy days will be the sport of the upper classes in the future. There will be a meet of ladies and gentlemen on some high ground on a gusty morning. they will be told that the professional attendants have started a hat in such and such a thicket, or whatever be the technical term. Notice that this employment will in the fullest degree combine sport with humanitarianism. The hunters would feel that they were not inflicting pain. Nay, they would feel that they were inflicting pleasure, rich, almost riotous pleasure, upon the people who were looking on. When last I saw an old gentleman running after his hat in Hyde Park, I told him that a heart so benevolent as his ought to be filled with peace and thanks at the thought of how much unaffected pleasure his every gesture and bodily attitude were at that moment giving to the crowd.
I think this is the central concept for me, is pausing and taking pleasure in the pleasure that your misfortune might be causing others. Almost getting excited about it.
Yeah, exactly. And then taking it to a, I guess, PETA approved sport level, where he imagines a world in which there's staged hat chasing.
Yeah, hunt hats, not deer.
Exactly.
That's where I feel somewhat validated, because I feel like the same I feel about sports. Like, that's why I'm not into it. Like, anytime something's getting blown around the wind, or like, I don't want to go around chasing some inanimate object. Like, even in sports, I don't get it. So I feel more consistent than people like that, like to chase a ball but not a hat. I don't like chasing anything. Maybe I'm not getting the point.
Have I ever chased a hat? I was wondering, like, I don't think I've worn enough hats to have chased a hat.
Yeah, well, I just liked his imagery, though. If you like really got into it, the hat blows off, you can just chase after it with all your...
Yeah.
Well, exactly.
Your glee.
Go for it and forget about how you look. And then maybe even get to the point, like the gentleman in Hyde Park, where you can appreciate, you can take a bow at the end to all the people that you've given pleasure to watching you chase it across.
Well, that's where it would start. It would end up, people be gambling on it. There'd be a coach breaking his clipboard in half, chewing out the team.
That's
people
right.
losing their, breaking their arm because they landed wrong, like tragedies, people getting taken in steroids. It just,
Oh, that's right. We can't forget about the effect of steroids on the hat chasing.
The hat chasing community.
That's right. That's awesome.
All right, let's move on to this. We got 2 more paragraphs.
The same principle can be applied to every other typical domestic worry. A gentleman trying to get a fly out of the milk or a piece of cork out of his glass of wine often imagines himself to be irritated. Let him think for a moment of the patience of anglers sitting by dark pools, and let his soul be immediately irradiated with gratification and repose. Again, I have known some people of very modern views, driven by their distress to the use of theological terms to which they attach no doctrinal significance, merely because a drawer was jammed tight and they couldn't pull it out. A friend of mine was particularly afflicted in this way. Every day his drawer was jammed, and every day in consequence it was something else that rhymes to it. But I pointed out to him that this sense of wrong was really subjective and relative. It rested entirely upon the assumption that the drawer could, should, and would come out easily. But if, I said, you picture to yourself that you are pulling against some powerful and oppressive enemy, the struggle will become merely exciting and not exasperating. Imagine that you're tugging up a lifeboat out of the sea. Imagine that you're roping up a fellow creature out of an alpine crevasse. Imagine even that you're a boy again, and engaged in a tug-of-war between French and English. Shortly after saying this, I left him, but I have no doubt at all that my words bore the best possible fruit. I have no doubt that every day of his life he hangs on to the handle of that drawer with a flushed face and eyes bright with battle, uttering encouraging shouts to himself and seeming to hear all round him the roar of an applauding ring.
Although Chesterton's like he's the comedic character here, like the kind of the idiot who's like walked away confidently, like, oh yeah, I just solved that guy's life problems.
I've never heard of. What's funny is I was raised in a Christian house where we were discouraged from using word phrases like he's referring to that rhymes with jammed about door. calling a drawer like a damned drawer, but I'd never heard anyone refer so obliquely to using that phrase as he does in the sentence.
Right.
Again, I've known some people of very modern views driven by their distress to the use of theological terms to which they attach no doctrinal significance, merely because a drawer was jammed tight and they could not pull it out. Which is hilarious. That reminds me of The Jerk by Steve Martin when at one point someone says "damn it," so he turns to the thing and he goes, "I damn thee," an inanimate object, which is that's the thing Chesterton's teasing about. But I love how he finishes with imagining, of course, tongue firmly in cheek. He said, "Of course." My exhortation had the greatest possible effect, and no doubt he's sitting there struggling with his drawer every day, cheering himself on and imagining an adulating crowd. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it makes a difference, the audience, because it's like one thing I can make myself angry with is telling myself you're choosing to be angry, like because it is a choice. You can, again, how you perceive the situation, but it's not something you're usually receptive to hearing. You feel like, well, no, this is a huge inconvenience to me, how stuck this drawer is. I'm right to be angry about this, and it's the cheerful Chesterton advice is not always easy to receive.
No, it isn't welcome, but nevertheless, it's true. And in our quieter moments, we can admit that, and that is part of that. I mean, I think you're right, Frank. This is the underlying subtext here: is that emotional annoyances are a choice. You have a choice over them. You don't. It isn't like you can. I mean, you actually have a choice over toothaches too. You don't have much choice over being burned at Southfield, but toothaches. I mean, you can choose to be stoic and ignore the pain, but the pain is real. The emotional choices that he's talking about, decisions that we make, those are not just. Not only do you have a choice about them, but they are in fact subjective to a certain degree, and so you can actually change your reality, so to speak, by your attitude, and not only be a happier person, but make the people around you happier, I suppose, too.
Absolutely. Well, let's bring it home here.
So I do not think that it is altogether fanciful or incredible to suppose that even the floods in London may be accepted and enjoyed poetically. Nothing beyond inconvenience seems really to have been caused by them. An inconvenience, as I have said, is only one aspect, and that the most unimaginative and accidental aspect of a really romantic situation. An adventure is only an inconvenience rightly considered. An inconvenience is only an adventure wrongly considered. The water that girdled the houses and shops of London must, if anything, have only increased their previous witchery and wonder. For as the Roman Catholic priest in the story said, wine is good with everything except water. And on a similar principle, water is good with everything except wine.
I've read this essay many times. I still never understand that last line.
Yeah,
you guys get it?
That one went over my head.
Okay, good. I'm not alone.
Yeah, but the adventure part, I mean,
yeah, I get the adventure.
That's one of the most significant things there. Like I said, we had my road trips with my wife where we were moving. We'd have like one of those like longest U-Haul vans you can get without having a special license, and then like pulling on a car, one of our cars behind it. And the thing is, when you have a cart connect, when you back up, it's a little bit different. It doesn't turn the way you want.
Yeah.
So the strategy we use is anytime we pull into some place is we go, find a parking lot you can just drive straight through. We made a mistake once and ended up trapped, so we had to back the way up and having to close down. Basically ended up closing down the whole main road in like a small town in Louisiana, trying to figure out how to back up and keep that thing right and get back on the street. And at the time, that's one of those things. It's an inconvenience, but now you look back and
Did you imagine yourself to be irritated? I love that term. They imagine themselves to be irritated.
Since we shut down so much of the road and had people backed up, hopefully they were entertained themselves by our inconvenience, like the guy, watching the guy chasing the hat.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's what coming from LA, traffic issues when people block roads. That is my Achilles heel. Like I almost always just find myself in instant fury, and it's really ridiculous how mad I get over something that most of the time isn't even their fault. I mean, sure, in some
driving?
cases, yeah, exactly. So, yeah, the water and wine, the Catholic priest. I can give you
from the story. Like what story?
Yeah, I don't know what story he's talking about. He might even be
Okay.
referring to his own Father Brown mystery, where he might have put it in one, because Father Brown, of course, is a Roman Catholic priest in the story. But I'm not sure of the timing wise. The principle is that the priest. So you have to imagine. So he's coming from England, high degree of anti-Catholicism for a few hundred years, because the Anglicans wanted vociferously. They made healthy use of Smithfield. Let's put it that way. And it wasn't even legal to vote as a Catholic until 1832 or so.
Wow.
So they there's all kinds of things the English propaganda the English would use accusing priests of, and one of them was that the priests were drunks, because they just used the excuse of drinking wine. Of the mass, they had to say a mass every day, which means they had an excuse to go and drink a lot of wine, apparently. And so the Roman Catholic priest's response to that is, wine is good with everything except water, which calls what happens in the altar during a mass is the priest mixes water and wine together, symbolizing the water from the side of Christ at the crucifixion and the blood of Christ, the wine being the blood of Christ, blood and water poured out of his side. And so the point is, if we wanted to get drunk, we would just drink wine. We wouldn't actually mix it with water, because wine and water together, it just makes wine worse. It's terrible, because you're watering the wine down. And so Chesterton is just using that little anti-Catholic dig in the Catholic response to flip it around and say water, which is his flood, is good with everything except the wine. So the water covering Battersea is good with everything. We should consider water to be fun. He just uses that anti-Catholic idiom and Catholic response to use it to. So anyway, that's my take. I think that's right, but I'd have to find out which story he's talking about. And I could not find
it so confident, like we would you guys get what I'm saying.
Well, and I think that's part of it, is that in England it was like the whole anti-Catholic and Catholic response thing has been going on for hundreds of years, and they know those kinds of those attitudes towards each other. So, I mean, that's the word hocus pocus is a twisting of hoc est enim corpus meum, which is the priest's words at consecration, and so the English mocked them the English would mock the Catholics by saying what you're doing is just a bunch of witchery. It's a bunch of hocus pocus. So there's all kinds of idioms and terms like that which refer to this history in England. So anyway, a little bit of the historical background, but I think it's just a story that or a phrase that most people would have been familiar with in his time.
All right, so just take a little feeder. Use a little license there at the because water. Yeah, I don't know. I still don't get why he throws the why. He's playing with the word.
I wish he ended at the adventure part.
Yeah. Like
life lessons, and then I go, what? Water, wine?
Yeah, just stop it. We're all considered. That's
Yeah. Just remember it this way. Forget all the nonsense I just said. Water is good. He just wants to say whenever you add water to something, it's great, except wine. But in this case, it's Battersea. But you're right. His coffee mug saying would have probably been a stronger finish.
But, but that's a wine glass saying water is good with everything except wine. Just put that out there and act like you understand.
That's right. Well, also you remember he's just converted to Catholicism, so that's on his mind. That's the year after he formally converted. I believe it's 1914. It was a formal conversion.
Anyway, to me the adventure thing is one of the best life lessons, because it's just we're constantly they call like first world problems and little things like that, and they're all just times we're choosing to be annoyed. And if you can rightly consider things, your life is so much better. I have a child who has Down syndrome, and one thing I've seen that compared to is, let's say, because that's devastating to a lot of people, but it's compared to is you booked a flight to Italy, but then you get off in Amsterdam, and if you're just focused on what you thought things should be, then you're going to be miserable. But if you enjoy what you got instead, then then it's a great thing. It's an adventure. And there's so much of life is like that, where if you can just accept things as they are and not what you have in your head as they should be, you'll be so much happier.
Right.
Very well said.
So
Are we going to finish with club music again, Ethan?
Are we done? Is that it? You got it?
Yeah. Oh, I didn't know.
I feel like we did. Yeah, it feels like that's
good way to close.
That's pretty good. So, thank you for joining us. Now, we're going to be.
Oh my gosh, your lyrics. Sorry, I can't take. I can't take whatever you're saying now seriously because the lyrics are so awesome.
I did read the man Thursday. I didn't quite understand it, but I really liked it.
That's a rough one. It's a fun one, but yeah, the ending's trippy.
That's the one where I can't stand that one. Like, I love Chesterton, and that's the ending of The Man Who Was Thursday has just made me throw the book across the room. Apparently I was not on the adventure boat. I was on the inconvenience boat.
Now, if you're following the book, cheese would be the next chapter. And me and Michael did not record. We did the episode with Mike Nelson at Mystery Science Theater, Nerve Tracks. Only problem is I've tried to record, so the episode does not exist.
It exists in the minds of 3 men, and it was awesome.
I hate to say it was the best episode of the show. It was excellent.
It was pretty good.
I won't take it personally.
Yeah, sorry, Frank. It's Mike Nelson. We all have Mike Nelson.
Yeah. It was pretty good. And it will only exist in our memories.
Yeah.
I was looking forward to it when I heard you record.
So my plan is to try to do a re-record, but I'm going to move it to last because we have a couple big chapters. The next one's The Medical Mistake, which is 1 episode, but then the next couple are going to take 3 or 4 episodes each because they're long. So, and then also we're going to be skipping the orthodoxy chapters because we're going to do orthodoxy next. So we'll save those for when we do the full book.
So are you laughing about the not hitting record thing? Is that now
it's hilarious.
Inconvenience rightly considered?
Yes. It is weird. It's weird how sad it is. I can only compare it to like when somebody dies. It sounds really dark, but it's the same sort of feeling like of loss that you can't get back, of a thing that you thought you were going to have it there and it's gone.
You got this special Mike Nelson podcast that only you two hear.
But like, as I've had every podcast with that, I think at least once I've lost an episode like that. Something got corrupted, a file got corrupted or something. Oh gosh, it just rips your guts out.
So that's our one.
Anyway,
that's our one.
Hopefully that's it. It had to be the best one. But yeah, whatever. Hilarious. That way we can make everybody laugh.
When we do the re-recording, it'll be good too. So
yeah. All right. Frank, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And don't forget to check out our Patreon. Early episodes, exclusive content, be part of the community discussions. I'm going to go to DJing podcast. Here we go.
Chesterton's Gateway is produced by Ethan Nicolle and Michael Grumbine. It is based on the book of the same name, which can be found on that capitalist monstrosity Amazon.com. Send questions and comments to GKCinfo@axcop.com. And join us on Patreon, where only the true Chestertonians can be found. Goodbye.
So quotable. All right, everybody. Don't forget, next time your hat blows off,
run
run after it with the utmost joy.
Run like the wind.
That's right.
Flailing your arms all about.
All right, everybody get down.
I'm going to take that advice.
I'm thirsty for the author of The Man Who Was Thursday. Drink it up.